All right, everybody, it's time for today's first guest. Now, you know him from many Hollywood movies, including In the Heat of the Night and Unforgiven. Please welcome to the show, Anthony James. Welcome, Anthony. Welcome to Late Night in New England, Anthony. First of all, I have to mention that you've written this wonderful book. It's a memoir, and it's called Acting My Face by Anthony James. Now, if you've seen this face in movies and television, it may remind you of an evil character in a television show or a movie, yes? He's played in a bunch, and when we talked, you've been in 60 television shows, 30 movies. And very memorable characters.
Thank you.
I want to get into your story now because it's a fantastic one about following your dreams. This show is obviously about people who follow their dreams. And you, at the age of 18, you were with your mom. At the time, it was just you and her. And you decided you wanted to go to Hollywood. So you jumped on a bus and a train, and you left South Carolina. And you went all the way to the other side of the country. How did you do this, and why did you make that decision?
Well, my mother said, graduated high school, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I'd like to go to Hollywood and see if I can get into film and television. And she said, okay. So we sold whatever we had, took 3 suitcases, copy of Modern Screen magazine, my mother's Greek accent, and we got on a bus, took us to a train, took us to Los Angeles. We got off at a Union Station, and then had no idea where we were going to go. Mm-hmm. And my mother, of course, being Greek, said, oh, the Greek Orthodox Church. Let's find the nearest one. And we did. I went to the church, and little did we know that it was in the middle of a terrible part of town. We rented an apartment, and bullets were flying in the first week. Drug deals were being made down the hall. And people were dying, literally. People were being shot, stolen cars going into the white picket fence across the street. And at one point, this boy who had been, I guess, stealing a car had been shot dead by the police. He was lying on the lawn. And my mother, who always wanted to help others, came out with a glass of water and ran out to the boy lying in the grass to give him some water. And the police, of course, said, no, he won't be needing any water anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's where we ended up for a while.
And I want to mention this, too, about your mom, because you say a lot of great things about your mom in the book. She actually left her family in Greece to marry your dad. Yeah. So there she was, leaving the homeland, if you will. Yeah. And then when your dad had passed away and you guys decided later on to go to Hollywood, there she was, leaving South Carolina. She's moving in her life. Yeah. But this time, like before she left for your dad, now she's leaving for you. Yeah. It almost seems like she always put other people ahead of her.
She did. That was one of her wonderful qualities, that as far as she was concerned, it was about others, not about her. But she took pleasure in that. So if someone admired her bracelet, she would take it off and give it to you. And truly, she would enjoy the pleasure you take with wearing that more than the pleasure she had wearing it. Mm-hmm. And so she loved beautiful things. It could be a house, it could be a coat, it could be a car, it could be the weather, whatever it is. But she never had to own it. She could look at it and see this wonderful dress that this woman is wearing, and she would say, what a beautiful dress. But she didn't have to own it. Mm-hmm. And that was what, and as a matter of fact, she gave so many things away that other times I would go to my closet and look for a sweater. And what happened to that sweater? And she said, oh, there was this woman, her son's about your size, skinny little guy, and he didn't have a good sweater. So.
Well, she sounds like a wonderful woman, and I want to mention this now. When you got to Hollywood, you were so naive about the process that you finally, through the church, were able to meet an agent and go see him. Yeah. And when you got there, he asked you for your pictures or your headshots, and all you had was Polaroid shots. What was that experience like?
Well, actually, there were brownie shots. So this is back in the 50s. And I gave them these little shots of me and a couple other guys standing there. My face was like this big. And I don't know what this guy must have thought. He was a very impressive agent. Years later, when I look back on that, I thought, my God, what was he thinking? And he saw that. Some alien landed on Sunset Boulevard, and came into his agency. So then he said, well, okay, where can we call you? And I said, you can call me at the Greek church. We don't have a phone. So I said, well, look, if you want to be a professional actor, the 2 things you have to have. You have to have a phone, and you have 8 by 10 glossies. Here's a card of someone I know, of course. And that was the end of that.
Now, the great thing that happened for you was that you were cast in this movie in the heat of the night. It was in 1967. It won Best Picture. How about this, everybody? But I wanted to talk about actually how you got the part, because it was a chain of events that happened because you were going to help a friend audition for an agent, and the agent saw you. What happened?
Well, first of all, I have to say, my mother would always say, you can throw me on the garbage heap, just give me luck. And luck is really the qualifying factor in all of these things. Yes, she was doing a scene for an agent and asked me to be her partner, which I was. And then afterwards, he wasn't interested in her, and he wasn't really interested in me, but he thought, well, you have kind of an interesting look. He said, so let me send you out to a casting director, see what kind of response I get. So I went to meet Milt Hammerman, and those days it was Death Valley days. And I read for him, and a couple of months later, he remembered me when his friend Lynn Stallmaster, one of the big-time casting directors in those days, was casting in the heat of the night. And so I read for him, and then I read for Norman Jewison, and then I met Walter Mirisch from the Mirisch Corporation, who produced the film. And the next thing I know, I was on a plane going to Belleville, Illinois, at a cocktail party, and I was going to meet Rod Steiger and Sidney Poitier. And I thought, my gosh, I'd seen Rod Steiger in The Pawnbroker probably a dozen times. What a great, great performance. And I dreaded meeting him. I felt like a teenage girl meeting Elvis. So finally, the guy dragged me over and said, well, here's Rod Steiger. And I said, oh, Mr. Steiger, I'm sorry, but I think you're great. And he looked at me and he said, well, don't be sorry about it. But he was great. He was a wonderful, wonderful guy. And I'm going to cut just a minute later. And I said a minute later, I mean in terms of shooting. When the film was finished there, we had to go back to Hollywood and do some interiors in the offices. My mother had never been on a movie set. She loved Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger, so I got permission to bring her onto the set. So she came onto the set, and of course she was overwhelmed by all the lights and the cables and the crew. And so I said, okay, I'm going to Sidney Poitier, come here. So he comes over and he introduced himself to my mother, and my mother says, oh, Mr. Poitier, you look the more handsome in the real life than in the movies. And she says, oh, well, thank you so much. And he leaves. Then Rod Steiger comes over, and she says, oh, Mr. Steiger, you look the more younger in the real life than you do in the movies. So she was very diplomatic, she was very charming, she charmed everyone on the set.
Now, you later on were going to get some other roles because of this movie. It opened some doors for you, and you eventually got an agent. And the funny thing was that the movie opened so many doors for you that you were getting the phone calls, and then you were calling your agent saying, hey, I got a call for this movie.
Gunsmoke called, Big Valley called.
But you got a lot of roles in TV shows that were Westerns and old Westerns.
In those
movies.
days, yeah, there were
and so you were in Gunsmoke. And one of the things that was interesting was that you really didn't love horses, and there was a film where you had to get on a horse, you had issues, and it's funny because that eventually turned around, and later on where you were given the part in Unforgiven, Clint Eastwood remembered that you didn't like horses, and so he said, come take this role, you only have to walk. There's no horse riding. How cool was that Clint Eastwood was doing that with you?
He was a wonderful, wonderful man. I'd worked with him on a High Plains Drifter 20 years before, and again with horses. See, I kept looking for the pole. I think, where's the pole? And the wranglers know right away, because when they want you to get on the horse so they can adjust the stirrups, and you ask the horse's name, they know that you're not really a guy who lives in the saddle. And they say, well, his name is Snake. Hi, Snake. Hi, good horse. Good horse. That's my history with horses.
Well, at one point in Unforgiven, they played a joke on you, and they said you were going to leave the house and get on the horse and run away, but they would cut before you got on the horse.
Yes.
And what happened?
Well, I was supposed to go out to this house to meet Gene Hackman. In the script, it said you ride out, have the scene right away. And then I called Clint over and said, what's this about horse? And he said, no, the horse will always be there tied up. We'll start with you already coming to the house, into the yard. Then you have your scene, you go back, and before you get on the horse, we'll cut. So we rehearsed it that way. And then, of course, we did the scene. I go back to my horse, but I don't hear cut. So I started adjusting the saddle. No cut. The stirrup. Nope. Bridle. Nope. Start petting the horse. Then I say, what do I have to do to get a cut around here? And everybody started laughing because Clint had set me up.
That is fantastic. Now, before we go, I definitely want to tell everyone once again, the book is called Acting My Faith. It's a fantastic memoir of your experiences in Hollywood and the story of you and your mom going out there. But you are also an artist, and you have been in some books. This one here is called Actors as Artists, and it features art from actors in Hollywood.
Yeah,
and eventually you got your own book out of this, and it's called Language of the Heart. And you were able to go around the country and show your book to people and do book signings. Yes. This meant a lot to you, right?
Yes, it did, because this is something that's done very personally. Mm-hmm. It's not done as a group like acting is. It's always a group contributes. Everyone contributes to the final product. This is just you and an empty canvas. Mm-hmm. Or I used to like writing poetry as well. It's just you and a page. So that was very important to me because it's very, very personal. Mm-hmm.
And when you decided to leave your acting career, or retire, if you will, you've been doing the art ever since, correct?
Oh, yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, I have been, yeah. As a matter of fact, I was with a gallery down on Newbury Street called the Arden Gallery about 15 years, and now with a gallery out in Natick called the Rinju Gallery. So mm-hmm. It's still going on. So I'll see some people think this is better than therapy.
Yep.
And cheaper.
Right. Well, one thing that we have proven over the years on the Steve Katsos show is that art and music is awesome, right, everybody? Yeah. It really is.
For sure.
Before we go, I do have to mention this. You have been in many TV shows, and it sticks in my mind. I remember that you were in Buck Rogers. You actually played a hero on that show, but I'll never forget it because you had a mask, and it's great.
I could not play a hero without a mask.
Yeah. Doesn't make any sense. But you took the mask off at the end, right?
Yes, but what was under it was even worse.
That's why I was probably like scared at that episode. But I'll never forget it, and it was you, and I can't believe you're here. Thank you so much for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, Anthony James. All right, here's the book. It's called Acting My Face. You can find it online. We'll be right back right after this. Thank you, Anthony. Fantastic.